Hello, greetings and welcome, my dear viewers and listeners. I apologize for the delay. Other tasks and university took more of my time than I expected. We were also hit by a heat wave, which made my brain overheat regularly, which caused the entire creative process to slow down even more. But I'm not doing this little intro just to explain myself, but to introduce two people who decided to play a role of characters in this episode. First is Artificialdragon, the main host of Can Mayonnaise Kill a Jedi podcast, here on YouTube. Some of you already know that I am supporter of this podcast for quite some time, and I am honored that Artificialdragon decided to play a role of none other but Governor Wilhuff Tarkin in this episode. I also extend my thanks to a young voice actor, CopperSkullAudio, who is playing the role of Dodonna in this episode. Links and relevant information will be in the description and pinned comment below. Another small thing. I extend my gratitude to all who decided to support me through Ko-fi and the growing number of subscribers on Patreon. Thanks to you, I can afford even more art for this series, including a dedicated art piece for this episode from 3D Vincens. If you want to ensure that more art will be created, send money into Ko-fi art budget. You know about those magical buttons under the video, as well as to comment in order to appease the algorithm gods. With all that out of the way, sit back, relax, get something to drink or a snack, and let's leave the stinking undercity of Coruscant behind and step into the light. If he had to choose between standing here or being on some Tauva forsaken world under siege by an orc wag, he would pick the damned orcs. The so-called unofficial banquet was anything but informal. The grand ballroom was packed, awash with music and polite laughter. Its columns gilded, chandeliers glittering like trap of light. Politicians, industrialists, merchants, corporate heads, and military officers mingled beneath banners and soft light, each spinning their part of a web made for a spider. And Ashen Blade was no spider, no water-caste diplomat. He was of a fire caste, and being here, in this place, of delicate words and faint smiles, felt like slow torture. He felt naked without his armor. The traditional robe he wore, soft and flowing, clung to him in the wrong way. It didn't belong on his skin. He couldn't even remember the last time he'd worn it. At every celebration in the past, he wore his Fireblade armor, custom fit over years, refined until it felt like a second skin. The absence of weight from his weapons made him feel exposed. Only one remained, discreetly hidden. He missed the others like old friends. If it wasn't for the Ethereal's direct orders, he would be long gone. But apparently, because Niatel had to make contact with the Hutts, he was expected to play along. To make nice with the Republic's elite. Smile, nod, pretend this wasn't a battlefield in its own right. It was in that moment when he unexpectedly felt jealousy towards Silent Tide. What I wouldn't give to be stuck in the lower levels right now, he muttered under his breath. He had claimed a corner beside one of the massive columns, making himself as small and inconspicuous as possible. The stars favored him tonight. Most of the guests focused on the other members of the Tau delegation. Across the room, at least 3 women were unsuccessfully trying to flirt with Haroshva, who stood still as a fortress, clearly unsure how to react. Ashenblade might have laughed if he hadn't just narrowly dodged similar advances moments earlier. He was quietly thankful he was shorter than the average man in this galaxy. It made slipping away from conversations a bit easier. No such luck for the towering Tarelian, who was visibly flustered while still trying to maintain the stoicism of a temple statue. Ashenblade was just about to consider rescuing the Emerald Giant when a trio of Republic officers approached. The one in the front was the youngest, sharp-faced, upright, focused, ruthless. He radiated ambition. Ashenblade recognized the type. He'd spoken with Imperial Guard commanders before the first shots were fired. They had the same smug aura, confidence laced with superiority. They looked different once they were dead, or kneeling in surrender. The second man had a face like carved stone, one eye replaced by a crude cybernetic. He was older, colder, excluding professional discipline. Ashenblade respected that. The man looked like a soldier, not a bureaucrat. The last of the trio, the eldest, early 50s if Ashenblade guessed right, carried himself with relaxed confidence. His uniform was tidy but slightly less rigid. Facial hair marked him apart from the others. A kind smile played at his lips, and he radiated warmth. He was a leader who led from the front, but also one who remembered names and faces. Ambition, discipline, compassion. A strange blend.
Commander Ashenblade, I presume?
The youngest said.
Governor Wilhuff Tarkin of Iriadu. These are my colleagues, Commander Trenot Screed and Captain Jan Dodonna. We read the initial contact report from your delegation and the data on the threats from your galaxy. We decided we had to meet the only military officer serving on your elemental council.
Tarkin's voice was confident, almost welcoming, but measured, controlled. Ashenblade gave a polite incline of his head. It's an honor. My name is Shasnel Furios Torvak. Though, please, call me Ashenblade.
Enjoying the party?
Dodonna asked, smiling. Ashenblade winced slightly. Not particularly, he admitted. This isn't my sphere. Your sphere? Screed asked, brow lifting. Diplomacy, Ashenblade explained. It's not my role, not my sphere. I'm of a fire caste. My purpose lies in defending the Empire and waging war against its enemies. He gestured towards the sea of guests. This isn't a battlefield I'm trained for. Screed gave a small nod. Understandable. I'm far more comfortable on the bridge of my ship than under chandeliers.
I get it.
Dodonna said with a chuckle.
Coruscant banquets can be overwhelming, but surely the Fire Warriors do not train every hour of the day. What do you do to unwind?
Ashenblade paused. I write poetry, and I hunt. He said, simple and honest. There isn't time for much else. I try to keep myself busy.
Ah, a fellow hunter. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Tarkin nodded in appreciation.
It's important not to lose your edge, nor forget the importance of duty. That should be the priority for any soldier, regardless of rank.
On that we agree, Governor. Ashenblade allowed a faint smile to cross his lips, though it quickly soared as his eyes swept across the hall. Were it not for the Seeker's orders, I would feel as if I were committing Vashya.
Vashya?
Dodonna asked, tilting his head slightly. Venturing between the spheres, Torvak explained. A taboo among my people. Each caste has its place in the great machine. To step into the sphere of another caste is frowned upon and usually punished.
Really? Your friend over there doesn't seem too concerned.
Tarkin gestured towards the small crowd nearby. Torvak sighed as he spotted Forgemind animatedly chatting with a group of industrialists. That one was something of a rebel long before the Elemental Council was formed. Still, he is speaking with others of his own caste, so I believe his actions remain within acceptable bounds. The council was formed to achieve specific goals. As long as we stay close to our own roles and the Seeker permits it, our conduct is defensible. He added, glancing between the officers. That's why I'm grateful you approached me. Speaking with fellow military officers would be considered acceptable in any hearing or inquiry. The three officers exchanged glances, visibly intrigued by the rigid division of roles within Tau society. Tarkin raised an eyebrow.
Even if most of us are naval officers rather than generals?
He asked. From what I observed, your naval commanders still oversee ground detachments. Naval infantry answers to you. That's enough overlap for it to fall within my sphere, Torvak replied. Skreed rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I knew your society was caste-based, but even so, I'm still surprised. It sounds restrictive. Our caste system is simpler than it appears, Ashenblade assured him. Unlike many others, the Tau castes are considered equal in value. That's an important distinction, one that often confuses outsiders.
What about the Ethereals?
Tarkin asked, gesturing towards Lifesight, who was deep in conversation with none other than Palpatine himself.
They clearly occupy a special role.
Ashenblade nodded, not denying it. My mentor once explained it to me this way. Fire, earth, air, and water are 4 pillars of our civilization. The ethereals are the foundation upon which those pillars stand, keeping them aligned and upright. The roof above it all is the greater good itself. The roof collapses if even one pillar falls, and the pillars cannot stand straight without the wisdom of a foundation. He said evenly, I hope that analogy makes sense.
It does.
Dodonna said with a nod, sharing a brief glance with his companions before returning a small smile to Ashenblade.
You say you focus on warfare, yet that was quite the poetic explanation.
Well, I did learn poetry from someone. Torvak chuckled softly. My mentor, Thunderstrike, was a great poet of our caste, and an even greater teacher. He paused, his voice lowering. May the light of Tauva guide his spirit in the afterlife. We lost him years ago. The entire sept mourned him for 3 days. He must have been a remarkable man, Screed said, his tone inviting more detail. That he was, Ashenblade replied solemnly. A fireblade through and through. He served the Empire for over 50 years. We lost him during the evacuation of Eri Tau. He stayed behind to buy time for the civilian transports. Transmissions confirmed he held the line for nearly 2 hours after the last ship left the orbit. He exhaled slowly. He died, true to his name, in a thunderstrike. He overloaded the fortress reactors and took tens of thousands of orcs with him. The explosion was visible from orbit.
A true act of self-sacrifice and dedication to duty.
Dodonna said, clearly moved.
Inspiring.
That is the role of a fireblade, Ashenblade agreed.
You've mentioned that title several times.
Tarkin noted.
Could you elaborate on what that means?
It's a military designation. The Tau warrior answered. We are called Chasnel.
I reviewed the ranking structure of a fire caste, and I don't recall seeing that one.
Tarkin frowned slightly. It's a special rank, Governor. Most fire warriors aim to rise through the hierarchy, first becoming battlesuit pilots, and eventually ascending to the rank of Chasseur. Fireblades choose a different path. We forgo the ambition of high command or the honor of piloting a battlesuit. Instead, we lead and inspire the infantry directly, especially the younger warriors. Ashenblade gave a small shrug. That's my rank and my duty. I hold it with pride. Where does that place you in the command hierarchy? Screed asked, clearly intrigued. Technically, we are just below the rank of Chas-El. In practice though, Chas-El and Chasnel carry nearly equal authority within a given force. As a fireblade, I often serve as a strategic advisor to a chasseur, and I am entrusted with key tasks and morale of the troops.
Wait, so when one becomes Chasnel, they cannot become Chasseur?
Dodonna asked, clearly surprised. That is correct, Captain. We Tau believe everyone has a place in the great machine. Some of us intentionally choose not to rise further in rank because we found where we belong. My place is as a Chasnel. That was my choice, and I am respected for it. Ashenblade said with a small smile. As I mentioned, I'm technically below a Chas-El in rank, but fireblades are often seen as trusted advisors to high command. I've participated in my share of grand campaigns, and because of my position, I was entrusted with objectives that could not be given to others.
Intriguing.
Tarkin muttered, rubbing his chin.
I must admit, I'm surprised you chose to forego the path to higher command to become a fireblade.
He glanced at Ashenblade.
I find ambition, especially the desire to rise to the top, to be a commendable trait. To abandon that path seems unproductive.
Then here's where we disagree, Governor. The Tau answered without hesitation. Ambition, if left unchecked, can lead to a disaster. I have seen such ambition in the ranks of the Imperial Guard more times than I care to count. He scoffed. It is common on the battlefield, ambition outpacing capability. Easy to recognize, easier still to exploit. Dodonna spoke before Tarkin could respond.
I find myself agreeing with you, Ashenblade.
The older commander said.
I've seen too many young officers try to prove themselves as prodigies when they lacked both the experience and skill.
Agreed. Screed added calmly. Ambition untempered by reason or wisdom can be catastrophic. Yet, lack of ambition can be just as dangerous, leading to inaction, stagnation, and predictability. I won't argue either of your points, Ashenblade said, bowing his head respectfully. Tarkin, still not fully convinced, chose not to press the matter further.
You said you chose to become a Fireblade,
he said after a pause.
When did that happen?
A flicker of memory passed behind Ashenblade's eyes. Flashes of blood, fire, and loss, before he forced them down with sheer will. He tapped his cybernetic eye. I found my calling the same day I lost this. My first proper battle. He said in a level tone. Really? Screed asked, his own cybernetic eye catching the evening sun of Coruscant. Would you care to share the story? Ashenblade was quiet for a moment before exhaling slowly. Walk with me. Let's find a quieter place. I'd rather not recount this tale within earshot of the entire party.
I might know just the spot.
Tarkin offered with a slight smile.
Follow me.
The group quietly broke away from the crowd, moving through a side hallway and into a secluded balcony overlooking the sprawling city. As the door shut behind them, Ashenblade began his story. It was nearly 4 decades ago. The Tau Empire had secured a space station near the border between our territory and that of the Imperium of Man. The station was unique, ancient, layered with centuries of history, abandoned, repurposed, rebuilt, again and again. The Imperium held it at one point. Pirates claimed it next, orcs after that, then the Tau came and took it. He paused, voice calm but low. We intended to expand it, to turn it into a forward operating base for our fleet. The station had accumulated countless names over the centuries, each civilization giving it its own. The Tau named it Oi Eo Ran, the Tower of Light, or Lighthouse. He said with a shake of the head, a poetic name, and a cruel irony, considering the station was a patchwork of ancient wrecks. But locals, those who visited or lived there across generations, had much simpler name for it. The Coil.
Must have been quite the sight.
Dodonna mused.
Was it brought with you to this galaxy?
Ashenblade shook his head. No. The Tau abandoned the Coil 2 years ago. A gene stealer infestation erupted in its depths, and an orc warband launched a full-scale assault. We tried to destroy it, but failed. By the time we secured it, the station was already the size of a small moon. With the orcs contesting the void, we couldn't bring in enough firepower to destroy it outright. He sighed, his voice heavy with regret. The Coil became a battlefield. Gene stealers, orcs, and half a dozen other factions now fight over it. A lost cause, though we didn't see it that way at the time. We should have destroyed it from the inside when we had the chance. A shame to lose something so massive, Screed said with a sigh. A space station the size of a small moon. Just imagine what could be done with that. He glanced at Tarkin.
Perhaps one day we'll see such a structure for ourselves, though preferably of our own design and not overrun with monsters.
Tarkin allowed himself a small smile before turning back to Ashenblade.
From what I've read about these gene stealers, the situation must have been dire if the Tau chose to abandon it.
The station was a labyrinth. Even with drones, it was impossible to police entirely. The gene stealer cult had to be hiding in areas we never reached. Ashenblade said, shrugging. That's war. You can't win every battle.
Indeed.
Tarkin nodded.
But you said you lost your eye there, shortly after the station was taken?
Yes. Ashenblade said, his gaze focusing inward. I was fresh out of training, still a recruit. I was deployed to the station as part of a security force. Our task was to patrol the corridors, protect engineers, and scout the deeper sectors to locate surviving communities. He paused, remembering. You wouldn't believe what we found there. Criminal cartels, makeshift kingdoms, mutants, and even tribes of cannibals who'd forgotten they were even on a space station.
That's hard to imagine.
Dodonna murmured, shaking his head. Is it so hard to believe, old friend? Screed raised an eyebrow. Here on Coruscant, there are people in the lower levels who don't believe the sun is real. Can you really doubt that, with enough time, a society might forget it lives aboard a space station?
When you put it like that, I suppose it's more believable.
Dodonna conceded.
So was your first battle against one of these hidden societies deep within the Coil?
Tarkin asked. I had a few skirmishes with the denizens down there, yes, Ashenblade replied. But my first true battle? That was against a coalition of pirates. He took a slow breath, letting the memory to surface. Our presence on the Coil wasn't fully solidified. We had just destroyed the main orc stronghold and began securing our foothold. Most of our fleet was off-station, chasing the remnants of the orc warband through nearby systems to prevent them from regrouping and launching a counterattack. In that moment of vulnerability, a pirate alliance struck. Ashenblade's voice grew colder, more focused. They were led by a rogue trader from the Imperium, Valorian Jarrison Secta Sol. More corsair than a trader, truth be told. He managed to unite several pirate clans and cut a deal with a band of Eldar corsairs. He saw the Coil as his future throne, wanted to make it the heart of the pirate activity in the region, with himself seated as so-called Pirate King. A pause. It was against his forces that I first tasted real war. He closed his eyes. I carried a different name back then. Spiritblade, what's your situation? Spiritblade, do you read? Shas ui, Kal's Sava voice roared through the comms. The warrior, who would one day be known as Ashenblade, fired a tight burst down the corridor, cutting down 3 pirates attempting to rush him. Without hesitation, he yanked a grenade from his belt and hurled it down the hallway. The explosion shook the walls, giving him a moment to reload. "Shasla, I swear by the Tauva, if you died like a fool!" Stormstrike voice cracked again over the channel. A shout, a boom, a gust of hot air. Spiritblade nodded to Brightshot, who leaned from behind the opposite wall and opened fire. "Still alive, Shasui," the young fire warrior panted. "We are holding corridor 12B8. The section behind us collapsed. We are cut off from the rest of the fire team. No wounded so far. Awaiting orders." He ducked back, letting Kais take over the firing position while he focused on the comms. "Understood," Stormstrike replied. "We will push towards your position. Make your way to chamber 10BC12, near the armory. It's one of our more entrenched strongpoints. We'll regroup and counterattack from there." "Copy that, Shasui. We gold on the objective." He exhaled with relief. "Gold confirmed. See you there, Shasla. Stormstrike out." The comm went silent. Myrnan let out a breath and turned to the rest of his squad. "New objective. Bur, you've got the pulse blaster. Take point." Bur-cha, divine purpose, hummed softly as she checked her weapon. Kais grunted and ducked as a last shot scorched the air past his head. "Can't say I'm thrilled about pushing into that," he muttered, charging his carbine. "There's a lot of them out there." "Then let's thin the herd," said Ol-Sum, Brightshot, tapping the grenade launcher under his carbine. "Agreed." Myrnan moved up beside the wall, gripping his pulse rifle, which felt unwieldy in the tight corridors of the Coil. "On 3, Bur first, me second, Kais third. All, you cover our 6. "Roger that." Brightshot gave a firm nod. "All right. 1, 2, 3. Kais leaned out, unleashing a trio of grenades, a mix of photon and pulse, down the corridor. Blinding light, disorienting noise, and flesh-tearing explosions followed. Screams were cut short. The team broke cover and advanced in formation. Kai's pulse blaster spat a withering cone of plasma, shredding pirates as they tried to regroup. Bur's close-range shots turned torsos into red mists, while Brightshot and Myrnan picked off stragglers. Blood sprayed across rusted walls. Heads burst, limbs flew, human bodies fell in pieces. The few returning shots, crude firearms, barely dented Tau armor. A last beam struck Myrnan's shoulder pad, forcing a grunt from his lips, but it glanced off the reinforced plate. The shooter died a heartbeat later, a pulse round punching through his skull. The pirates scattered, but the Tau couldn't stop. They had to reach the armory fast. "This way!" Myrnan called, tracking his HUD. The team sprinted down another passage, slamming and locking the doors behind them. The sound of distant fighting grew louder. Their comms lit up again. "This is Thunderstrike to all units," came the commanding voice of a Fireblade. "Eldar Corsairs confirmed among enemy forces. Repeat, Eldar Corsairs confirmed. Maintain vigilance." Myrnan cursed under his breath. Eldar. Pirates were one thing, but Eldar? That was different. "Spiritblade?" Bur asked, first time showing uncertainty. "We advance. We need to regroup." Bur nodded and led them forward. Moments later, they reached what passed for a door, more a rusted tube hatch than a proper entryway, and leaned out to look inside the massive chamber. Myrnan froze. Dozens of pirates were storming the defensive tower position near the armory. Crude but deadly weapons filled the air with fire. Missile launchers, flamers, plasma guns, las rifles, grenade launchers and more. The human wave attack was breaking against the earth-cast fortifications, but only barely. His HUD lit up. Friendly markers appeared on the opposite end of the chamber. Stormstrike voice returned. "I see you are in position. We are going to hit them from behind. Break their formation. Understood?" "All gold, Chasui. Standing by," Myrnan replied, relieved to give command back to someone else. A moment of silence followed. One of readiness, tension, and still hard nerves. Then... now! Tau warriors surged from both ends of the chamber. The pirates, focused entirely on their forward assault, never saw it coming. Pulse fire tore into their rear ranks. Tau training and precision made every shot count, and within moments their specialists and heavy gunners were dead. Photon grenades exploded, blinding and deafening the rest. Their assault shattered. They broke formation. Screaming and stumbling, they scattered into side tunnels, chased by relentless Pulu plasma. "We are in the gold!" Stormstrike shouted. "Everyone, to armory! Let's bring some heavy guns into this fight!" Spirit Blade felt confident. The pirate coalition had caught them off guard, but the coordination and discipline of the Firecast would win the day. That's what he thought. Right up until the disaster struck. A high priority channel lit up on his HUD, one reserved solely for Aun Wu, the Ethereal in command of the Coil. But it wasn't the Ethereal's voice that came through. "Your celestial leader is dead," came the voice, cruel and sharp, each word deliberate. "Let it be known that I, Caliph Dusk Whisper, have ended his life and those of his guards at the very heart of your precious little station. May despair crush your heart's Tau. This is my hunting ground, and you are nothing but prey." The words hit like a seismic shockwave. The world dimmed. Sounds became muffled. Even the air tasted wrong. An ethereal? Killed? Here? Panic and disbelief swept through the Tau ranks. And in that single, breathless moment of stunned silence, the Eldar struck. Myrnan turned towards Stormstrike, ready to ask for orders. Anything to make sense of what had just happened. When a Corsair appeared in a blur, raised a shuriken catapult and blew Chasui head apart. One of the razor-sharp discs continued on, slicing through Myrnan's helmet and tearing into his left eye. He screamed. The pain jolted him out of his paralysis. He hit the ground hard, toppling over a barrier, clutching his helmet as blood poured down his face. The ruin left where his left eye once was throbbed and burned like fire. He tore the helmet off and flung it aside, gasping through clenched teeth. The remaining Tau were slow to react to the sudden onslaught. Brightshot was already down beside him, a smoldering hole through his chest. A single Eldar laser shot had pierced right through his heart. Shock and disbelief transformed into rage within Spirit Blade. Myrnan reached up and yanked the shuriken shard from his eye socket. Around him, chaos reigned. The Eldar were advancing, murdering Tau as they did, and his fellow warriors struggled to resist. He looked for a weapon. His rifle was gone. Brightshot's carbine had been blown apart. The only options were the sidearm on his hip and a human chainsword laying beside a fallen pirate. It was a brutal, primitive thing, crude teeth, greasy hilt, but in that moment it felt right. His rage mirrored in its design. He picked it up. And then, in a moment of instinctive clarity, something within him clicked. His senses sharpened. The battlefield unfolded before him in perfect detail. He could feel the Corsairs, where they were, how they moved. Spread thin, overconfident. They fought the Tau broken, inert, beaten. They were wrong. He surged to his feet with a roar and swept the chainsword wide. Two Corsairs who had been closing on his position were beheaded before they could react. Stunned expressions still frozen on their faces as they fell. He spotted the Corsair with a heavy weapon, the one who killed Brightshot, and put a pulse round through the alien's eye, blowing molten armor and brain matter across the floor. "For Anwu!" he bellowed, voice raw with fury. "For the Tauva!" The Corsairs turned their guns on him, but the rage of one warrior spread like wildfire. The other Tau heard him and answered. The paralysis shattered, the fire warriors roared their war cries and charged. Some raised ceremonial blades, others scavenged weapons from fallen foes, but all of them were fueled by the same raging fire, one that burned without restraint and showed no mercy. The Corsairs had come expecting to kill stunned, broken warriors, not to face a storm of vengeance. Spiritblade led the charge, the chainsword roaring with each stroke as it tore through alien flesh. The Eldar fell back, caught off guard and overwhelmed. He watched as his comrades surged from the armory, rallying behind the fury that now cursed through them all. A Corsair screamed as she was dragged down, dozens of knives stabbing, tearing, ripping her apart. She didn't even make it halfway through her spell of agony before silence claimed her. When his pistol clicked empty, Spiritblade dropped it without hesitation. He grabbed the severed head of the Corsair and raised it high, roaring his wrath for all to hear. He wanted them to know, as long as he breathed, the Eldar were the prey. Ashenblade closed his right eye for a moment, then continued. The Eldar withdrew the same day. They are a dying species, can't afford heavy losses. Our counterattack proved too costly for their liking. He explained. The pirates and the rogue trader contested the station for another 4 days before the navy returned in force. After that, they cut their losses and ran. He paused briefly. I was awarded a mark of recognition for my actions, and Thunderstrike himself took me as his student. That was the day I knew I wanted to become a Fireblade. I found my niche, my calling, and I've never regretted the choice. A moment of silence followed. Vince Creed gave a small nod and a faint smile. Seems we are more alike than I thought. I lost my eye to pirates too. 8 years ago, Biscaran raiders above Nilel. He said, his face darkening. I made sure they couldn't take anything more. What about you? Did you get your hands on any of the ones responsible? One of them. Ashenblade replied. Caliph Dusk Whisper vanished after the Coil. No confirmed sightings near our borders since. As for Valorian, we tracked his base to a moon called Emerald End. Our navy ambushed his fleet, crippled it, and our ground forces launched a full assault. After a week of fighting, the base was destroyed, and Valorian with it. Screed nodded with satisfaction. Good. Mercy is wasted on scum like that. A quick death is more than they deserve.
Did you take part in the final attack personally?
Tarkin asked. I did. The operation was led by Surestrike, student of Commander Shadowsun herself. But it was my own student, Shaz-El Kouka, True Strike, who struck the final blow.
Ah, yes. Commander Shadowsun. She's considered your greatest strategist.
Tarkin said, rubbing his chin. And I assure you, Surestrike is following in her footsteps. The Battle of Emerald End was masterful. A textbook Montka. Ashenblade said proudly.
Montka. I've seen this term before.
Dodonna said, squinting thoughtfully.
Can't quite recall what it means, though.
Nor can I, Screed added.
I believe it was mentioned in the section describing your military structure.
Tarkin said, glancing at Ashenblade.
Was I mistaken?
No, you are correct. The Firecast divides its art of war into two primary schools of thought. Montka, the killing blow, and Kauyon, the patient hunter. Ashenblade replied.
Really? I always assumed those were standard tactical doctrines.
Tarkin said with mild surprise. A common misconception. We have dozens of operational doctrines, like any military. But Montka and Kauyon are broader philosophies, approaches to war itself. Ashenblade clarified. Commander Shadowsun is a master of Kauyon. It empathizes stealth, patience, and trapping the enemy. Her popularity has made that school dominant in recent decades. Montka, by contrast, focuses on aggressive, decisive strikes and seizing the initiative, keeping the enemy off balance and unable to regroup.
Interesting,
Tarkin said.
And which do you favor?
Ashenblade smiled. Both, and neither, though I am a follower of a lesser-known school, Monat, the Lone Warrior.
A lone warrior?
Dodonna asked, clearly intrigued.
Tell us more.
It's a path favored by our special forces and commandos, Ashenblade explained. It demands that its followers be capable of completing even the most difficult missions alone, if necessary. Ironically, as a Chasnel, I'm tasked with leading and unifying entire cadres. Yet I believe every soldier should not only find their niche, but push themselves to master it completely.
Now that,
Tarkin said, raising a finger with a rare smile,
is something I wholeheartedly support. Every soldier should strive to be the best at what they do.
Agreed, Screed added, nodding. It's surprising that this mindset isn't more popular among your people. He turned to Torvak. Unity and coordination between individuals and units is valued more than individual strength, Ashenblade replied. The greater good is an ideology that places the well-being of the many above that of the individual. This collectivist mindset is deeply ingrained in our people. It's the norm.
A wise doctrine.
Dodonna said.
Unlike some of my colleagues, I prioritize coordination over raw individual prowess. Relying too heavily on exceptional individuals can unravel a strategy the moment they fail.
I agree, Captain. Ashenblade nodded. That's why I don't dedicate myself solely to any one school of warfare. I see merit in each of them, just as my old mentor did. Many warriors try to prove their school superior above all others. I follow the example of Master Puretide, seeking balance and choosing the right approach depending on the enemy. An opinion born of experience, Screed said with approval. I'd be very interested in reading some of your writings on the art of war. From what little I've seen, your methods differ from ours in many ways. I'm sure an exchange of knowledge can be arranged, Ashenblade said calmly.
I hope I could receive a copy when the time comes,
Tarkin added with an easy smile.
But there's something I'd like to follow up on. The Tau Empire and the Firecast in Peculiar seems far less rigid in its application of tactics. The footage we were shown, especially against the creatures you've faced, also demonstrated your military strength. I could spend hours asking questions, but one topic in Peculiar intrigues me most.
Ask your question, Governor, Ashenblade said. I will do my best to answer.
Psychological warfare,
Tarkin stated clearly.
In the materials your empire has shared, particularly in the reports concerning the Imperium of Man and their god, there are accounts of how you broke enemy morale or even turned their forces against each other through unorthodox means. I myself am a firm believer in psychological warfare. It's especially effective against pirates and the undisciplined.
Ashenblade nodded. I agree. Psychological warfare is a valuable tool, though if you are looking for detailed strategies, you would better serve speaking with the Watercast. They are responsible for studying our enemies, finding the best ways to influence and manipulate them.
Really? I thought warfare was the sole domain of your cast.
Tarkin raised an eyebrow. Direct combat, yes, Ashenblade clarified. But each cast has a role. The Watercast oversees diplomacy and information warfare, including psychological operations. I'm surprised you even need it, Screed said, shaking his head. I've seen the footage of your storm surge. How can anyone face that and not flee? You'd be surprised how many of our enemies have no concept of self-preservation. Ashenblade sighed. It's frustrating, really. Far too many lack even a hint of common sense.
Well, at least you have reliable allies fighting by your side.
Dodonna offered with a smile, then paused in thought.
Still, I keep thinking back to your account of the rogue trader. You mentioned your student? True Strike, wasn't it?
Yes, what of her? Ashenblade asked, raising an eyebrow.
You said she became a chasseur. So, why didn't she follow in your footsteps?
Dodonna observed.
I just found that interesting.
Few warriors have only one mentor, Ashenblade replied. I was her first teacher, but later Sure Strike became her master. She still carries my lessons, but walks her own path. In fact, she was recently promoted to Chasson.
You must be very proud.
Dodonna said with a smile. I am. Ashenblade nodded. Over the years I've trained many students. Some died in the service to the greater good, but many achieved great things. True Strike might be the finest of them all. He paused, then smirked slightly. I wonder if she will take my son as her own student, just to get back at me for all the harsh training I gave her. Dodonna blinked.
Your son?
Yes, my youngest, Rika, also called Strong Strike. He's nearly finished his training. Right now he is posted on a small outpost called Furious Ned, undergoing his first trial by fire to become a full fire warrior. True Strike was assigned there to oversee defenses. The site is due for expansion into a full colony soon. Why would someone like True Strike be given such a modest assignment? Screed asked. Surely her talents could be used elsewhere. Defending a young colony is no modest task, Commander. Ashenblade replied calmly. Especially one near the borders, where the threat of invasion is very real. Planning a colony's defenses is a monumental responsibility. It's also a test in itself. True Strike has proven herself on the battlefield time and time again, but her fire still burns too hot at times. This mission will test her patience, which I believe will serve her well. I can see wisdom in that. Screed conceded with a nod.
How many children do you have, if I may ask?
Tarkin interjected. I had 9, of those I chose to father at least. Ashenblade answered casually. The 3 officers exchanged surprised looks.
9?
Dodonna exclaimed.
I only have 1 son. How did you even find the time?
Ashenblade chuckled. We Tau do things a little differently from humans. Our children are raised communally. If you were asking how many I've acted as a father to, the number would be in the dozens.
I feel sorry for your wife.
Dodonna shook his head.
To give birth to 9 children.
Torvak shook his head. They didn't come from one mother. All 3 officers blinked.
Come again?
Tarkin asked, clearly taken aback. In the Tau Empire, reproduction is carefully regulated to prevent overpopulation and to promote beneficial genetic traits. Sometimes we are assigned mates, or we donate genetic material to be used in artificial wombs. The children are then raised communally. Torvak explained. That said, most pairings come from what's closest to your idea of family unit, through a ritual we call Tali Sera, the bonding.
Bonding?
Dodonna echoed. Yes, Tali Sera is a sacred ritual. A number of Tau, regardless of gender or age, may choose to enter into this bond, declaring themselves bondmates. The closest translation would be soulmate. It's the highest form of personal commitment, second only to the greater good and the empire itself. These bonds often grow into romantic relationship, and from that come children.
So, the Tau are polygamous?
Dodonna asked, clearly surprised. Not necessarily, Captain, Torvak replied. Song Tao chose a single partner. I had 3. 2 of them were part of my Talisera. An exception from that rule was Zhu Shi, a commander I once served under. We've gotten close to each other. She gave me a son and a daughter. She died in battle against the Tyranids. Both of our children fell with her. Lu Kai was a rising star, mother of 3 of my children. And Burcha, she was my first love. She bore me 4 children, including Strong Strike. He paused, his voice heavy with memory. There were 6 of us in that bond. A Fireblade and 5 warriors. My honor guard. Inseparable, loyal, exemplars of a fire caste. And now they are gone. His voice faltered. I lost them all on Mugulaf Bay. All of my bondmates. And my eldest child. My daughter. Begacy, the hidden courage. All gone in the fire that consumed that world. His expression darkened. A grief beyond words etched itself into his face. Raw, wordless, and deeply personal. Dodonna stepped forward and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. His voice was soft.
My condolences. I only have 1 son. I could not imagine the pain of losing your firstborn, and all those you held dearest.
It's a deep wound, Ashenblade murmured, touching the scars across his face and the cybernetic eye that shone with blue light. Far deeper than this one. Screed bowed his head. My condolences as well. Thank you, Commander. It still hurts, but I must go on. I have to go on. There is no other choice. He inhaled, steadying himself. What I have left of my bondmates are 6 children. And this. With a smooth, deliberate motion, he drew a blade from beneath his robe. The officers leaned in. The sheath was a work of art, crafted from metal and dark wood, adorned with delicate flowers and tempered colored glass.
What is it?
Tarkin asked. A Talisera mirror, a bonding knife, Ashenblade said reverently. During the ritual, it's used to cut the skin of bondmates, allowing their blood to mingle. It symbolizes the union of body, mind, and spirit. He unsheathed the blade, revealing a beautifully forged weapon engraved with the ancient Firecast script and symbols of his sept and the Empire. It shimmered with ceremonial power. Screed's eyes lit up. A masterpiece. May I hold it? Ashenblade shook his head with a slight grin. Only members of the same Talisera may hold or wield another's blade. And I'm afraid I don't intend to make you my bondmate, Commander. We've only just met. Dodonna snorted. Screed chuckled. Even Tarkin allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. I hope I didn't offend, Screed said after composing himself. Not at all, Ashenblade replied, carefully retrieving the blade and returning it beneath his robes. He was about to speak again when voices rose near the entrance. All 4 turned towards the sound. 3 figures had entered. The team that had been sent into the Undercity to meet with the Hutts. Looks like Silent Tide finished her task earlier than expected, Ashenblade noted with a raised brow. He turned to Tarkin. Governor, if you are still curious about psychological warfare, she is far more qualified than I to answer your questions. Please, allow me to introduce you.
I would appreciate that very much,
Tarkin said, nodding and shifting his attention towards the Watercast operative, already deep in conversation with local officials. The group began moving towards the entrance, towards Niatel, unaware that her words in the Undercity had already planted the seeds of a war that would one day shake the Outer Rim to its core. And that's about it, as far as this episode goes. I once again extend my thanks to Artificialdragon and CopperSkullAudio for lending me their voices for this episode. Remember about art budget on Ko-fi and that you can support me through Patreon. But here is another important thing. Q&A. Yes, I decided to run a Q&A where you ask questions under this episode and I will answer the chosen number of them in additional video. One question per person. Start your comment with Q&A and I will know to put it on a list and consider if I should answer it or not. You got that? Great. Because that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most critical day. Ta-ta!